This episode, how to not be offended by the internets.
Wow.
Are you ready for this?
I'm not sure. Just unplug, no?
Just unplug. I mean, that
Don't
could
have
be
a phone anymore.
That's like that can't be a solution unless you're just going to avoid the internets altogether, and that's not possible. You can't really. Well, you could.
You
go
could.
completely off grid and just be a hermit.
I'm saying being Amish, man.
Be Amish. Okay.
No technology, nothing, man.
End of episode.
Done.
I think every single episode begins with one of these like 5 seconds simple. Just do this.
Exactly.
Bye.
Here you go. That's it. Easy.
Okay, we're going to get into this first. Welcome to 12-Week Relationships. This is your place for better relationships in weeks, not years. And when Glenn and I say relationships, we mean all of them.
All relationships.
All relationships, starting with yourself, working outwards to every relationship around you. And it's kind of cold in the studio today. I'm going to be honest. I'm like shivering right now.
Yeah, my hands are a little bit cold. Like there was certain episodes where I was sweating.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, yeah, it's really cold.
Yeah, it's chilly.
Yeah.
Let's get straight into this. I got to thank the interwebs for the inspiration on this one. This is a topic I actually have been wanting to discuss for a while. I do get quite a few DMs from other creators and educators that kind of talk about how do you avoid being offended by people on the internet, and how do you develop that thick skin, basically. We're going to talk about that today. But the specific inspo for this one is my daughter. More specifically,
your daughter triggered this crazy reaction of racism.
Triggered some people by posting. So I took this picture, and I don't know if you guys can see this, but on my Instagram, you can see this picture of Josie in a bathtub. And I'm doing a before after edit because I am also a photographer, and I like to show how I create, these things. So this is an iPhone picture, and this is the edit. And I describe in this edit that we're using a preset from a company called Visual Flow. And this preset is a lighting condition based look. So for those that are not familiar with photography, lighting conditions are like, well, you shoot in different environments. And so the way that you edit a picture changes based on those environments. So in this one, we're shooting under a tungsten or a yellow light, which means that it's going to cast a lot of extra yellow. These are like the indoor lights that we have in our home, right? Mm-hmm. So they put a lot of extra yellow on the skin. So I do this edit and I correct for it and kind of bring it to where I like it, my vision for it. And then I post the before and the after. And this one, I assume she's a lady, but who knows?
This person,
yes, comes on and goes, racist edit.
Yes.
And I immediately just started laughing. I'm serious. Like, as soon as it happened, I go, Yen, we got another one. Because every time an internet crazy comes to us, something that Yen and I can enjoy together,
That's a really good attitude to have. Like, did you develop that like early on, or did it take some time to do that?
I started in my childhood, my friend.
Yeah?
Being Muslim in Utah.
Yeah, good training.
I had a good background on preparing to not care what other people think. But if I'm honest though, I think in my early years on YouTube, it was difficult. I would read every single comment and it would get in my head a lot. But yeah, you sort of over time start developing a thicker skin and start not caring as much.
No, I give you a lot of credit for that because, I never really got on the social media at all. So all of a sudden to get thrown into this and then seeing how much time and effort you put into it, there's some crazy things that come out.
Yeah, it's kind of a beautiful thing because we have
a topic now.
Yeah, topical gold coming to us nonstop through the interwebs. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. But yeah, she basically, from that picture, she put racist edit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you responded and you said, racist comment, WTF, what the F? Right?
With a happy face.
With a happy face.
With a laugh. What the heck are you talking about?
So when you first saw that, your reaction before commenting, you were just kind of laughing, or what was your reaction at that time?
I was laughing. I was just like, yeah, there's so much psychology going wrong with this individual just from those two words, racist edit, that I was kind of blown away by it. Because I mean, you're basically I understand where she's coming from, because what she's trying to say is that everybody edits to make people look like white people, which isn't true. But you could say from like an editorial magazine thing for the past, several decades, it was, it's kind of like being white is sort of a beauty standard. In fact, if you go to Asian countries, like if you go to China, if you go to, Korea, Japan, very much like the pictures that end up going up are where these Chinese people are white. Like, and I'm not talking like white person white. I'm talking like
Pale
ghost
white.
like pale, like
Yeah.
pure white, like the wall white.
Yeah, like I use a lot of heroin white.
Yeah. Like it's not a good,
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it's not attractive at all. But there's this beauty standard that is kind of held up in a certain look. And so I understand that. And from an editorial standpoint to like, let's expand, let's keep skin tone what color skin tone should be in the sense of the work that's being published in magazines and that kind of stuff, right? But to go on somebody's Instagram and be like, racist edit, and you're like, I think you've missed the mark on that whole movement just a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a very closed off perspective and it's very reactionary. Like she could have asked you some questions about it, right? She could have probed more because once you make a comment like that, that's such a strong statement. To throw it so easily, it kind of shows like there was no real thought into what she was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's fine.
But you bring up a good point though. There's like there's like a goodness there of like wanting to promote like, Asian beauty. Mm-hmm. But in this forum and then the way that she approached this, like it was very misguided.
Yes. But we're going to talk about what leads to these kind of comments. And I think it helps from the standpoint of like, if you're trying to educate or if you're just trying to have like sort of a presence online and not be offended, all of these things are very helpful in that process. But do you want to read back my comment to her?
So she put, well, let's see. So you put racist comment, WTF, laughter. And then she replies, nah, that's wrong to portray white skin as perfect. And then she goes, how? Question mark.
Yeah. So I said racist comment. And then she said, how? Mm-hmm. And then she said, it's wrong to portray white skin as perfect.
White skin as perfect. So then she made her point, which that was her point.
And then I made my point next.
And then you put, I suggest you move on to another page. There's a lot of dangerous racist editing out there that you need to put a stop to. I don't want to monopolize your time.
I mean, this is true. This is just one page.
She is a warrior advocating to stop racist
There's so
editing
many
out in the world.
Out there.
Yeah, in the world. And she was putting you in your place.
Listen.
She's letting you know. She's educating you.
In my opinion, stupid comments deserve stupid answers. That is my stupid answer.
No, that was a great answer, though. It's boundary setting. It's boundary setting with this person.
Well, yes, if you are triggered, and I actually posted this shortly afterwards, I was like, look, if you're triggered by this kind of stuff, oh my goodness, life is going to be difficult for you. Yeah, life is going to be really hard.
But it's this free-floating space where there's no consequences, basically. So then people can say whatever the hell that they want.
Yeah, but I genuinely think that for someone to, when she posted that, I mean, it came immediately after I posted the image.
Yeah.
Then when I said the comment of like racist comment, what the F, and I laughed.
Yeah.
She was blasting back within 30 seconds. There was responses.
Yeah.
So you could tell that this wasn't just a person like trolling and leaving a comment and being gone. They're emotionally invested in this.
Yeah.
And that's where I was surprised. I am like shivering right now, dude.
But I like the fact that in your comments, instead of like, she's very emotional. So then responding emotionally back, there was a boundary and a limit to what you were trying to do.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think that's a hugely important thing to do.
I'm always going to, and that's one of our steps, is to make sure that you set a boundary. Like this needs to be. So she responds back. I was going to let it go.
Yeah.
But then she wrote another comment like separate. How is my comment racist and your edit not?
And your edit not.
So she's so invested at this point that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have to bullet point this out for our podcast anyway, because this is going to be a topic on our podcast. Yeah. So I might as well write a comment telling her. So I said, number one, like as mentioned in this before and after, that this is a preset that removes yellow, AKA tungsten, which was in the caption, because she's under a tungsten light. This is an indoor light. Number two, I'm partially colorblind, which is true. So what makes my photographic style unique is the way that I see color. This is the way that I see color. So I edit to my vision, not to yours or anyone else's. And for this scene, I wanted the tub to be white, and I still see plenty of color in her skin. So when I look at the photograph, she still looks really yellow to me. Maybe I'm not seeing this color the same way that another person is, but to me, she still looks very yellow. Number 3, it's racist that you assume someone else's editing style is because of racism versus just a stylistic preference. And I go, oh, and this is my daughter. I'm Iranian. Her mom is Cambodian. But yeah, go fight that good fight. This is me being kind of a dick again. And then I said, I'd invite you to stop following me. Wish you the best. Which, by the way, I checked, and she hasn't stopped following me. So I don't turn off the triggers if it's bothering you this much.
No, but you boundary set with her, and then that was pretty much it.
So that was it. That was my piece of that. And I thought, well, we're going to talk about each of these points when we come onto the podcast. But there are several things happening with each of these, right? And it could be racism. It could be sexism. It could be, you're this form of bigot. You are.
There's a whole bunch of isms.
There's too many.
Yeah.
Too many.
But I'm going to take her side. I'm going to say your plight in life, in life was to marry an Asian woman, to have Asian kids, so that you can do racist edits to whitewash everybody, especially the people in your family.
You're right. Hey, just curious.
I'm just saying, man. I'm curious. I'm gonna call it out right now.
When you look at that photo, does she still have a good amount of color in her skin?
Yeah, I just, it's a pretty photo. Like, I'm not an expert, but I didn't think like, wow, this is really racist.
But you look at it, she still looks yellow to you, right? Is it just me?
I mean, I think the coloring because of the, like, I just think it was just a good photo.
I removed too much yellow, bro.
So that was your evil plan.
And gone wrong. Yes.
And then in this studio there's 2 Asian people in this room right now. You're going to edit and whitewash us too.
I have betrayed all of us. I am sorry.
This is your evil plan.
Next time I will leave 400 more points worth of temperature in the photograph.
That's why the air conditioning is cold, to make us more pale right now. Right?
I know. It's to make me shiver so it sounds like I'm scared right now. So this comment was, and it's not to like put this person on blast or anything, because I think it's funny. But I also think that if you're anywhere online, you're going to see this stuff everywhere. And it's about everything. Maybe someone calls you homophobic. Maybe they say that you don't know what you're talking about. Maybe they say like they can call you out on a million different possible things. So first, why don't we talk from the standpoint of the understanding the person making the comments, and then we'll talk about kind of setting up the boundaries and receiving and that kind of stuff. But you mentioned ethnocentrism first.
Yeah, so ethnocentrism is basically seeing things from your point of view only. And then the term comes from a cultural perspective. So like, for example, like if you're Americanized and Westernized and that's all that you see and you compare other cultures only from that lens, you're not really being open. You're just judging everything that's happening. Mm. And so, from this person's comments, I'm sure that she experienced a lot of ethnocentrism, but then she herself is now projecting an ethnocentric point of view, right? Because she knows nothing about you. And then she's making these comments that everything is racist when it wasn't.
And this is kind of what people would do across the board, right? Because this plays into, because I was saying that we were kind of talking about this and I go, this seems like frequency illusion. It also seems like confirmation bias. And then you go, it's also ethnocentrism.
Yeah. Because ethnocentrism basically just means a closed off point of view, and you're only going to see what you're going to see. Mm-hmm. And then that's where the whole confirmation bias comes in, because you're only going to look for anything that validates what you believe versus actually mentally and emotionally being open to learn and to try to understand. So understanding is mental and emotional expansion. Ethnocentrism is closed off and just being judgmental.
Mm-hmm. And on the side of confirmation bias and frequency illusion, this is, so frequency illusion is a good analogy of this that my friend would make would be that you go and you buy a car and you buy a red Toyota Prius, and then all of a sudden you start seeing how many red Toyota Priuses are out there. But it doesn't mean that just because you bought that car, the number of them change. It just means that now you're noticing it, right?
Right.
So maybe you experienced something in your life. Maybe it was someone being racist. Maybe it was someone being homophobic. Maybe it was whatever it might be. Then because you experience that one thing, you start to see it everywhere. and you start to think that everybody is doing this thing. And then it plays into the confirmation bias side where, okay, this one instance, this thing happened. So in every instance, it must be the same thing. And you start looking for data to basically support this viewpoint.
Exactly. It's basically wearing sunglasses where everything looks tinted, even though it isn't.
But now social media is making this much, much worse.
Well, I mean, they categorize everything into categories, right? So it fits your biases and preferences now.
Yeah. Have you seen the, what is it, the Social Dilemma? And then there was another one. But they talked about basically how Facebook is exaggerating these three things for each person. Because
if it fits whatever their viewpoints and beliefs are.
Yeah.
So that they keep looking and it fits their feeds.
Yeah. So if you think the election was stolen, for example, then you get fed more content that is controversial and on that subject because those are the things that you're looking at. So it basically falls into into all three of these things. It reaffirms your viewpoint because those are the things that you're clicking.
Right. But it also just keeps you in that space, and then you're not open to other possibilities.
Yeah.
Or solutions or perspectives.
Yeah. You literally think that every single person is believing the same thing, or they're approaching life the same way, or that if I think, I don't like the election was stolen is like a hot topic, but if I think that the election was stolen, then everybody must think the same thing because you're fed into these groups and in these places where people are just constantly discussing it. Right.
No, agreed. So you have to be really, really mindful of that. And I think part of the scary thing is if you're emotionally open and then you experience all this, it can take a person aback, right? And just be like, wow, this is crazy. Like, look at all these negative judgments and closed-mindedness that's taking place. It could be really overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. There's so we know what's happening on the commenters side. There's a couple other things too that are happening though.
Okay.
Like beyond just the biases and the way that they're seeing the world, right?
And the projections.
Yeah. They also have the time to be doing this.
Okay, that is true. They're very emotionally invested.
Not just emotionally invested, it's like they're invested in the wrong places. Like what healthy person would go onto someone else's page to leave comments to try to instigate or try to correct them? Would you do that?
No, but I think in general, like people that are basically, they're just looking to be offended. That's what they do.
Looking to be.
It's just like people that are basically, it's confirmation bias to the extreme. It's projection to the extreme. They're only going to see what they want to see. And then they're just basically looking to be offended. They're not looking to find the right solution. It's more about just proving the wrongs that take place.
I also think that it's people that just don't have anything better to do.
Maybe. I just feel like, for example, like road rage. Mm-hmm. Like people are more violent in the car because you're isolated and there's a contained safety. Whereas if you walk on the street and you bump somebody, people are more cordial because there's greater consequences, right?
Sure.
So the internet is the ultimate like emotional distance, being in a car space where you can just act as crazy as you want. And so basically anything can come out.
But I guess what I'm saying is that this is kind of like somebody sitting on the side of the street and throwing comments at the people that are passing by, right? You have to have time to sit on the street and throw comments to the people that are passing by. So I'm saying that this is another issue of this is just that the person doing it, they already don't have necessarily a healthy lifestyle because they are using their time and energy for something that you and I wouldn't do. Like there's too many things we got too much going on to be sitting there and doing this stuff and policing other people's pages or looking to be offended.
No, I agree with that. But I mean, I don't know this person, but I would assume that this person, when they're going to work and they're walking the streets and they see like a person with makeup and like, oh, she's racist. She's whitewashing herself. Oh, this person, oh, look at this person. Oh, you're selling out. Like, I think that's just what she does regardless of where she's at.
I'm sure.
But then she's more controlled when it's face to face and won't like go to the person's face and like racist edit in her face. But she'll do it safely because there's an emotional distance, but she still has those biases everywhere that she goes.
Yeah. No, I would agree with you. That would be the next piece of it.
Whitewashing Asian lady, whitewashing Asian man, right? Like that whole
Internet
thing.
Anonymity.
Like she just does it all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that anonymity side that kind of plays into this, that there's a screen between you
There's a safety.
Yeah, a safety net.
Yeah.
There's also a quote that I heard, which is that, I'm just paraphrasing, that people who generally don't have their lives together take on these pseudo-moralistic stances so that they look good to their friends and family. And the accessibility on social media just makes it so much easier to voice those opinions.
They become keyboard warriors.
Yeah. Keyboard warriors. And then they're creating their own avatar. Like most people try to create an avatar like their life is perfect. This person's avatar is that I'm a champion for racism, but it's coming out in these weird ways.
Yeah. There's this other thing too where, okay, I think we've covered the commenter side quite a bit.
Sorry.
No. It's just to say that like there's so many things going on that side that are playing into this viewpoint, right? So we have that ethnocentrism, we have the confirmation bias, frequency illusion, the fact that they have the time to do this, they have internet anonymity to protect them from this.
Correct. Their own wounds.
Yeah. Then we flip over to the person receiving the comments. So how do you build up a thick skin against this kind of stuff? Well, I would go, number one is understanding the person on the other side of this. And we've done that. We know the person on the other side of this. Number two, I think is first setting up that boundary of, I'm not going to let anybody, I mean, this is just a general rule. If I don't really care, if I'm not invested in you, I'm not going to really care about your opinions of me. And I don't invest in very many people. So that immediately limits the amount of people that I'm kind of exposed to in terms of giving up emotional control.
So when you're saying that, is it fair to say like it's kind of lowering expectations of what it is? Like it's not a place where like, hey, we're just kind of socializing. It is somewhat social, but then it's just this place of like, it could be a negative swamp of just projections and people's issues coming out. And then being able to acknowledge that and then set a boundary with that and then make it what you want it to be.
Yes. And I'm saying start with real life. That boundary should exist in real life. Like if someone at a grocery store says, F off, you're the biggest piece of ass I've ever met in my entire life. I don't know why I'm like doing the fake swear words, but you're the biggest piece of shit I've ever met in my life. Like, why does that matter? Cool.
Well, I think a bigger issue too is like setting boundaries. It can't be your whole social life. I think that's what you're trying to say, right? Like the social media can't be your place of all socialization and your identity as a person.
Well, that's a different problem. Yeah. If that's the case.
Yeah.
If social media is your social identity, that's another problem altogether. But I'm saying that these boundaries, they should start in real life. In my personal life, I would say that for sure, there are less than 10 people that I genuinely care about what they think, right? Less than 10. And the reason for that is that I don't trust anyone enough to give up my own emotional freedom, my own emotional health, right? If I'm going to care what everybody says, then I'm basically saying to you or to Anthony or to anybody, any stranger on the street, my emotional health is in your hands. What you say and what you do to me, it matters. And if that's the case, how often are all the people around you going to be happy? How often is everybody around you not going to say something to offend you, not going to hurt you? So if you don't create that boundary in real life, where these are the people that matter and these are the opinions that matter and everything else is gone, then you're going to struggle even more when it goes to the internet, because now you've taken real life and you've applied all the things that we just discussed, right? The anonymity factor, the ethnocentrism, the ability to just say anything you want, to be able to have that screen between you and that protection. And just all the crazy, like we talked, people that do this aren't healthy. Mm-hmm. And you're, without this boundary in place, you're basically saying, my emotional health is in your guys' hands.
Which is really, really scary.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying in real life where there's not that many people that we're interacting.
Right.
Now you take it to this social world where there's 1,000 times more interaction on a daily basis. And many of the people that are interacting are very unhealthy.
But that's what I mean. So like, having a really healthy real life, right? And then giving your respect properly in terms of who you emotionally invest in. And then when it comes to this avatar world, not putting so much energy into it, mm-hmm. other than what it is that it's there for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So limiting the amount of emotional energy that goes into this whatsoever, I think, is key. And setting up that boundary where in your real life there should only be a few people whose opinions actually matter. In the online world, it should be zero.
No, I agree. Because people, people act on the internet. They wouldn't do that in real life.
No.
They wouldn't go to people's face. Racist at it.
Yeah.
You crazy person. I hate you. F off and die. They wouldn't do that if they were in front of the person's face.
And if they even thought that, they might say, don't you think her skin is too white? Or do you think that the color looks a little bit pale to me? That's what they would say, right?
Yeah. They'd be more careful, more respectful.
But what that person was looking for was for everybody to jump on the bandwagon.
And
She was looking to post this thing and then for all the social justice keyboard warriors to hop onto it and be like, yeah, take this down.
Get all this vitriol.
Your daughter looks too white.
Get all this vitriol and all this.
Your 15-month-old is not that color.
Yeah. but I mean, yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah. What's even more crazy is that I know a lot of creators that let's just say that you'll get to a place where you have 100,000 people following you, right? Holy shit. You have 100,000 people following you. And I know a number of creators that have this number and higher who actually get upset with the comments that are made about their stuff, whatever they're posting. That's terrifying.
But I think that's what makes it hard though, because I think people put their passion into the things that they're putting out there. And then it is their emotions that are being put out there. And then being able to separate that from like all these crazy, uneducated comments that are put out. That's a hard thing to do sometimes, I think.
Yes. But the other side of that too is that to me, anything that you are willing to fight hard. Okay, so from the standpoint of like the creator who's now receiving these negative comments, right? Whenever I see a creator fighting hard against those comments, I see truth in the comment. I don't see, you know what I mean? Like if the person says, man, you are not qualified to be teaching this, and the creator's on there justifying why they are qualified, then I go, actually, there's probably some truth.
There's some truth there. There's an insecurity there or something.
Yeah, there's some sort of insecurity or something there that's making it so that you feel like you have to go and engage. Mm-hmm. So the places where these comments like hit home, when they go through, I would say the second piece is to acknowledge from your side that there's something that's making you sensitive to that thing. There's something that's allowing you to be triggered. Maybe it's a personal belief that you are racist or you're not good enough or whatever it might be. And that thing should be addressed. Yeah.
So I think self-awareness is really important. So understanding that people can be trolls and keyboard warriors, but if something triggers you, instead of responding out into that life, that world, maybe why is it triggering me? What do I need to work on? What do I need to address?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a healthy thing to do.
A lot of that happened, back in 2020. Again, another one of these social justice parades that everybody was calling out people for their white privilege. Oh my gosh, you've got white privilege and you got this and you're racist and this is and then it was, during that same time, it was also being sexist and, you're a misogynist and you're this. And I would see people fight back so hard against those things. I'm not this. I don't have, privilege. I'm this. I had to struggle for everything that I have. And they just go justifying every single thing. Instead of what, if you're not worried about that or about people's perception of you being that thing, you don't respond. Or you just say, I'm sorry you think that way. Move on.
Yeah, you just set a boundary. Like it was my wife's birthday yesterday. So we actually went to a Japanese sushi place. And he was a very nice guy. 65-year-old man. He was getting really drunk. And then there was like some Japanese
65 man getting old.
Yeah, he had his sons there. And then like the sushi was really good. It was like an omakase type of thing.
Yeah.
But you know what he said to us?
What?
He's like, dude, you lost your Asianness. And then I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, you're Korean, right? And I go, yeah. And he's like, because we weren't drinking. We're just having like sushi. And then the people on the other side were drinking. He was serving all these drinks. He was getting kind of wasted.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, I could tell you he's like, Korean people don't function that way.
What does that mean?
He's like, you should be drinking with me. He's like, your face doesn't look like a person that's like engaged and wants to drink. Because I don't, right? And he's like, you're kind of white, man. And then and then he looked at my wife, who's Japanese. She speaks fluent Japanese, and he was like, "You're not Japanese." And she's, "No, I am." And then she's like, he's like, "No, I could tell by your face." He's like, "You're not Japanese." And then so she's like, "Speak Japanese to me." So she started speaking Japanese to him, and he's like, "Oh, you're from China."
What?
you're a Chinese person that speaks Japanese, right? And then he's like, she's like, "No, I swear, like I'm fully Japanese, right?" And then she started speaking more to him, and he's like, He's like, I came here in 1974, and he's like, "Look, you could see the Asianness in me." This was weird. It was so weird. I was like, "Yeah, man, I guess so, dude." I was like, "I was born here, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I could tell, man." I could tell, man. He's like, "You need to start."
Actually, wasn't, but he thought.
But he thought, yeah. He's like, you need to start drinking more. He's like, you need to get that back.
Now, what if you allowed this drunk 65-year-old guy to actually affect your emotional well-being?
Yeah, I mean, it was just funny to me because, like, okay, like when I was younger, you know, like when I went to Irvine and then I was hanging out with the Korean people, they would do the same thing. Like, you better be Korean. My parents, like, you better hang with Korean people. You better do all these things. So I never really fit in anyway.
I got that too on the Iranian side.
And you got to act this way, and you better make these facial expressions and all these like weird things. So like,
which most of those facial, those are like angry expressions.
It's like angry expressions that you just look like you're hurt, but you're like being strong. Like all these weird things, right?
Like they're drinking and they're saying cheers, but it's not like cheers.
Not,
it's like Gunbei, but they're like angry.
But he was just like, "Dude, you need to come on, man." And he was like, "Come on," right? And I was like, "Nah, dude, I'm really good. I have to wake up early tomorrow."
I gotta drive. I gotta wake up.
I gotta wake up. But he was like, he kept saying that over and over, and then, but he was really nice. Like he just kept serving us food, and then that was it. But yeah, so like it can come anywhere.
It can come anywhere.
Yeah.
The crazy part about it though is that in real life you're limited to the exposure that you get, right? So even if you have this sensitivity in real life, you're just by physical whatever, you're limited. Maybe you are going to interact with 20 to 50 people on the high end in a day, right?
Yeah.
But if you have 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 followers, or if you're just posting something that just happens to go viral, instantly you're exposed to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And every one of them has the right to say whatever the hell they want about you.
No, it's true. And I think it's separating the difference between being emotionally expanded and then being vulnerable and wounded. And it's learning to separate that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't be vulnerable in this space of like, my worth is based on what people say.
No.
But it's being available to all the different perspectives and projections people have and points of view. And it's learning to separate that out.
And the more that you fight it, the more that there's truth to the statements being made.
Yeah. And then you're just going down this hole with this person too. Like you're going down to their level.
Well, that was the third piece, right? The next piece on like, how do you not engage is to realize, okay, so number one was setting up those boundaries, right? Yeah. Not allowing anybody other than that inner circle to really have an opinion that's going to affect you in any way whatsoever. And even within your inner circle, there's boundaries.
Yes.
Number two was essentially being self-aware, right?
And own your projections. If there's something triggering, instead of responding, be self-aware and be reflective and see if there's some truth to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going on past that, number three, I would say, is understanding that you're not going to change people's opinions. Like the internet is not a place for good discussions, for good dialogue. We're not face to face. There's no body language present. There's no ability to have, they can check out of the conversation whenever they want, right? They could leave a comment and just be gone. Doesn't matter what you say after the fact. It's not necessarily a place to engage and understand that you're going to come to any form of solution.
Yeah. So it's not a place to just release all of your emotions freely.
Yeah.
And try to get validation that way. This is not the place to do it.
Well, and it makes you kind of look like a crazy person, right? Because if we've described the person making those comments as somebody that's completely unhealthy in lifestyle, in everything, the places they're choosing to put their energy, when you choose to argue with that person, what does it say about you?
Yeah, it's just bringing you down to that level, and then that you're maybe crazy too.
Yeah, you wouldn't, I mean, in no other context would you like, you know what, I'm going to join the debate club for 5-year-olds. And you're going to be the only adult. Can you imagine that? Like you're the only adult in the 5-year-olds debate club. And you're like, Glen's there. And he's like, but Timmy, I think that's complete garbage. You should go to bed 30 minutes earlier. And here's why, Timmy. Psychologically, the brain must get this much rest. And like this is you having a crazy in-depth conversation with somebody that is not healthy or at your level.
No, I agree. And what's that saying? Like if you're arguing with the crazy person at a distance, no one knows who that crazy person is.
Yeah, no one can tell who the crazy person is.
Who the crazy person is. So yeah, it's just a waste of time and energy.
Yeah.
But that made me feel good. A bunch of 5-year-olds. Imagine that. I could feel the power in that moment. I'm like, hell yeah, go to bed early, man.
And even if you win, so even if you go to the 5-year-old debate club, right? And you win the debate with these 5 other 5-year-olds and 100,000 people see you do it, what is their impression of you?
Dude, you're better than a 5-year-old.
They're like, what is this guy doing?
I'm at 5.5. My level of maturity is a half a year older.
That's the way that I imagine it. Like whenever one of these people like wins a conversation, I imagine them at their keyboard, like pounding their chest, like, I showed them what's up. And all of us are just like, dude,
yeah,
you have problems.
Like if that is what gets you off, like, man, you need to reevaluate your life.
Across the board.
Across the board. Man.
Across the board.
Dust those Cheetos off your chest and take a look at yourself, man. No, for real, man. You know?
All right, let's take a look at our notes and see if we had any other. I think we had another point here. Oh, this is, by the way, the new MacBook Pro that looks just like the one that's 8 years old. Okay.
Practice.
You had that humility. I think that fell into being self-aware, right?
Yeah. So in general, there's something known as cultural humility. When it comes to like other people's culture and background, you're never the expert on another person's life, their background, their socioeconomic status, what they've been through. So you always keep the humility of never being an expert on another person.
That's from the commenter standpoint. That's from the person making the comments, right?
Yeah, but it could be flipped on the other side too. Like it's understanding that people project their issues and that be humble in the fact that they're just projecting their own pain. It's not for you to solve or for you to get involved in it. Just be humble in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to say one other thing too along those lines that I don't know how to do this, but I wish more people just didn't, to a degree, didn't care about their own self-image in the sense of like, you should be authentically you and you should be doing your best to be a good person. And beyond that, that's where it should stop. Because I think a lot of people get wrapped up in these, especially from the side of receiving these comments and seeing that, is that you're so worried. And this to me is where the humility and the self-awareness comes into play. From the commenter's side, or the person receiving these comments side, is like, if you are not completely wrapped up in your own self-image, you're not going to really care. But if you feel like everybody needs to like me, I have this persona, I am this person, this is what I'm known for. If you're wrapped up in this and you don't have that awareness and that humility, then you are going to care. You're going to care what each of these persons says because it's going to potentially tarnish whatever self-perception you have, this image that you're trying to portray.
Yeah, because your whole identity is in your avatar then.
Yeah, or in this persona.
Or in this persona that you're trying to project.
You've already jumped to the metaverse, dude. You're going avatars.
But it is kind of an avatar, right? I mean, that's like, where it's going, right?
You're just getting so meta on me right now.
Sorry, man. I have moments, man.
Facebook has stolen that word now. Now,
yeah, it's
when
meta.
we say meta, we're talking about Facebook.
That is true.
But previously it was just memes, and I like the memes, the meta memes, you know. Now Zuckerberg is taking that from us too.
He's taking that too. Bastard.
Okay, last thing I would say for this person receiving the comments is stop reading the comments. But I also want to say, like, I actually read most of the comments on each of the platforms that we get feedback from, because it gives me a lot of good ideas. So, you know, in this case, it was something kind of negative that gave me the idea to, okay, we should address this in a podcast. But in most cases, it's actually something positive. Hey, can you explain this next? Or what about this? Or so when I'm listening to someone like Rogan who says, just don't read comments whatsoever. I mean, he's at a level that's so far beyond. He's probably receiving so many comments that if you read them, then you just spend all day reading them. So I get that. But the same side, I think that you can read comments if they don't get to you. you can read them and you can actually get a lot of value from feedback and from what people are, saying. So long as, again, you have healthy emotional boundaries set up, this isn't going to bother you. But if you're having a hard time creating those boundaries, if you're not there yet, then I do agree. Stop reading the comments.
Well, I think the more successful you get in this world, the more you have to really know yourself and know your foundations. Because you can lose it all getting caught up in this world and your whole identity in that. Like Joe Rogan, like how many followers does he have? Like it's like 100 million.
I don't know how many people listen, but
at a certain point, if you have that many followers and you have that much impact and people are that invested, there has to be a boundary. And maybe that is the boundary of just not reading at all.
It makes sense for someone like him because that's a different level. Very much a different level. I think for someone, and we have a substantial following, like in terms of, there's probably about 1 million people that follow us in our platforms. And I would say that more often than not, I get a lot of really good ideas from comments. A lot of things that people, they just want more explanation on. We get a lot of our content for the podcast from questions and things that are being posted in comments and direct messages. And if we were to ignore all of it, I think you would be out of touch. But at a certain point, maybe it begins to be too much.
So maybe once it becomes too toxic, maybe that's where you have to start dialing it back.
I think it's only toxic if you don't have your boundary set up. So if it's toxic at all, don't read them, right? Because you haven't yet developed the boundary to kind of like cut off the emotional connection between these things. So if you're in that place, I would agree, don't read them at all. The only time I think that, let's say that you set the boundary and you're saying that you shouldn't read them or I don't read them, I feel like that's because you just received too many. Like if you're at a level, if you're The Rock, if you're Joe Rogan, if you're these people and you have, hundreds of millions of people and thousands of comments on every single post, don't spend your time or energy on that because it's just too much. But we're not anywhere near close to that level. And so for me, there's a lot of good feedback that I get, but it's important to have that boundary. So if you have the boundary, read, get your feedback and your ideas. If you don't have the boundary, don't read the comments.
But boundary means how much emotional energy you're willing to invest in this.
Correct.
Right? So like for you personally, where's the limit in terms of emotional energy that you give?
I would say next to zero. I mean, I spent 5 minutes responding to that person. And those 5 minutes were basically the outline for this episode. And that was it.
What about the positive comments though? Or the ones that are helpful?
I do respond to positive comments, but
where's the energy? Is there an energy difference in that?
I don't know. I mean, like the only energy difference would be like most of the positive comments are just emojis or they're just like great job or whatever. So you just, high five, whatever back, thank you. That's it. So, I mean, you could say that there's a little bit more engagement in this one because I actually wrote back and then I actually conceptualized what I wanted to talk about on this podcast. But the investment was for the topic, for what we're going to be discussing here. It wasn't necessarily because I have something to prove to that person. I have nothing to prove to that person. And a couple times I even invited that person, just stop following. Like you're good, dude. You go deal with the stuff that you got to deal with.
Yeah. Go champion your causes elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say that, the emotional investment there was next to zero.
But I think that's a really good point that you just brought up is whether it's a positive thing, whether it's taking information about topics or it goes to this negative place, it's still just about information.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Life is kind of like this, in my opinion, it's kind of this big social experiment, right?
Yeah. And then I think that's a really healthy boundary to be able to filter things out versus this is my identity.
For sure.
And I'm looking for validation in this and this is who I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess going back to the points that you made, right? In terms of like knowing who you are and being okay. Like this is where in 2020, where I saw so many people lose themselves in these battles online because they were so worried about people perceiving them a certain way. I had friends that would go on and just post these tirades and just talk about all these different things, and they would defend themselves of why they believed in vaccines and why they shouldn't get vaccinated and why this and how COVID is this and I don't have privilege and I'm this and I'm not racist and you're racist. And they went so deep into all these rabbit holes because they cared what everybody thought about them, right? They think that, if someone posts I didn't even take these down, like these comments. Anyone can go post on my pages that they think I'm a racist asshole. Go post that I'm a bad parent. Go post that whatever you want. I don't care. And I'm not even going to remove it because I know who I am. And if you know me, you know who I am. And if you don't, it's cool. I'm good. Like if you want to perceive me as being racist, fine.
Yeah. That's not your issue.
But for a person that is worried about being perceived that way, that's where we get back to again. If you're worried about that, then is there some form of truth to it? If you're worried about that, is there something inside of you that is making you, self-conscious about this thing that you're triggered?
Yeah, or maybe like in your real world, maybe you need to look at the connections and the relationships you have in your life and build more solid foundations in that world.
Yeah, and at a minimum,
yeah,
maybe you're not racist, maybe you're not, sexist, maybe you're not any of these different things, right? But if you're still concerned about it, then at a minimum, you are worried about your image. But you're worried about the way people perceive you.
And that's the boundary versus worrying about the image. Like if you're triggered by a comment like that, then you have to look at your real life and see, is this possibly true in my real life?
Correct.
Yeah. And I think that's the healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you give into the fact that at any day, Glenn, you and I could be canceled.
That is true. It could happen.
This is the funny thing. I've been asked that so many times because I actually posted some stuff back in this past year where, I was standing up for things that made sense, stop Asian hate, like, love black people, love every single person that's next to you. Like black lives do matter. Like all these things that you could easily stand behind and say, don't be dumb. Like these are things that are important. And I would get these comments of like, don't you believe, what if your clients get upset and they stop booking you? What if you get canceled? What if this? And I'm sitting here in my head going, you can cancel me. I'm still going to do what I do because I enjoy doing it. Cancel me. Like that's fine. Like I'm not doing anything differently right now than I wouldn't do if I were canceled.
Yeah, because you can't live off of fear and what other people want, because then it's just going to be this, you're not going to do anything because it's all fear based at that point. It's going to be reactionary versus creating and doing what you truly believe in and value.
Correct. But that cancel culture movement has gotten so many people terrified that we don't see truth in media most of the time. And I think the truth is we're all going to screw up. We're all going to make mistakes, and we should be able to acknowledge them, own them, be public about them, and move forward.
Well, I agree. Besides cancel culture, there has to be a rehabilitation culture.
For sure.
Well, a forgiveness culture.
If you're going to create a cancel culture, then you're going to create a culture where people aren't honest.
Yeah, agreed. And then also when it comes to causes, it's defining doing something in real life versus just championing a cause on the internet. Like that provides information, but that's not really championing a cause. Like Dave Chappelle had that joke. He was like, yeah, I saw all these people have their heads cut off in war. And he's also, I championed my cause. And I put, don't like. he's like, I contributed, making the joke that just because you're not liking things and responding, you're not really championing a cause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved, I love that there are people like Dave Chappelle, like Joe Rogan, like all these individuals who are actually standing up and saying, no, you should stand behind your opinions. You should be open. You should make mistakes. You should do all these things. It's okay.
It's okay.
And move forward with it.
Yeah. And if this is going to be life and you're going to invest your life in this world, then let's make it more real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. So I think that's it. How not to be offended by the interwebs. We cover it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this was a fun episode, as are all of them. But if you guys would like to learn more, you guys can check out 12weekrelationships.com. Chris is going to kill me because this is at the end of it again. But we do offer coaching for individuals as well as for couples. So improving your relationship with yourself as well as those people around you, the people that matter most. That's available with Dr. Glen. And you guys can sign up for a free 15-minute consult at 12weekrelationships.com. In the meantime, we'd love for you guys to help us out by hopping onto the iTunes store and leaving a review. As long as it's a positive one. It helps. It helps when it's a positive one. Thank you. And if you guys have questions or things that you'd like to answer, or if you don't have a positive review, if you have a negative one, DM it to us. You can find us at 12 Week Relationships on Instagram. we would love to bring that topic onto the podcast. Or if you'd like, just make a dumb comment on one of our posts and we'll bring it on the podcast anyway.
Exactly. We're going to bring it up anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it for us. We hope you all enjoyed. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank
Peace.
you.